The storm breaks. The sky, once golden, had turned an unnatural shade of gray. A gust of wind rattled the shutters. A second later, the first cold drops of rain struck the cobblestones. The storm had come from nowhere. Too fast. Too sudden. All at once. Lucienne and Eva hurried toward Jean's door as the wind howled through the streets. By the time they reached the entrance, rain was pounding down in thick sheets. Eva knocked. There was no answer. Lucienne stepped forward, testing the handle. Luckily it turned easily. The door creaked open slowly as it scraped the wooden floor. The scent of incense, damp wood, and something unfamiliar wafted through the air. Eva stepped inside first, candlelight flickering against the walls, casting long, jagged shadows. Then, she saw her. Jean lay sprawled on the floor. A pool of dark, sticky blood spreading beneath her. The candlelight flickered against the blood pooled beneath her, thick and dark. But Lucienne's gaze wasn't on the blood. It was on her eyes. Or rather, the absence of them. The empty sockets gaped up at him, raw and dark, as though something had carved out the windows to her soul. Eva couldn't help the gasp that escaped her lips as her knees felt weak. And then, the symbols. Etched into the walls, painted in her blood. Familiar shapes, jagged and unnatural, forming a spiral of meaning that should not be understood. Lucien's stomach twisted. He had seen these before. Not just on Julien Moreau. Not just in the crypt. But long before that. A crack split through his mind, memories unbidden, unstoppable scratched their way to the surface of his mind. Flashback, the night everything changed. Darkness. A winding road. Laughter. His wife, soft and warm beside him. His daughter in the backseat, her small hands pressing against the fogged-up window. A woman standing in the middle of the road. Dressed in white. Still as death. A symbol, burned into the pavement. Glowing, just for a moment, before fading into the night. The same sigil now painted in Jean's blood. Back to the present. Lucien's breath came ragged, his vision swimming. The candlelight twisted the shadows into familiar shapes, the hooded woman, the sigil, the night that had rewritten his life. His chest tightened. It was the same symbol which he had seen on the night his world was torn from him and one that remained ingrained in his thoughts ever since. Eva's voice broke through the haze. Lucienne? He blinked hard, wrenching himself back to reality. He balled his hands into fists as he tried to control his emotions. Jean's lifeless body. The bloodied symbols. A message, that seemed to have been left for them to find. Lucien's fingers curled into a fist. His past wasn't just haunting him. It was warning him. He swallowed, forcing his voice steady. We need to find out who did this and who else saw these symbols. Eva frowned, still watching him. You saw something, didn't you? Lucienne didn't answer. Because the truth was worse than anything he could say. The past wasn't just catching up. It was leading them straight to the Grail. Not the known crypt. The hidden one. A place sealed away for centuries, not to honor the dead, but to bury something far worse. The same crypt that had drawn the fascination of several before them and had claimed the lives of just as many. Eva's breath caught. Where? Lucien's eyes flickered toward Jean's body. His mind was already moving, pulling the pieces together, the pattern emerging from the blood and the walls. He turned sharply, scanning the room, the bookshelves, the scattered papers. Then he saw it. Half hidden beneath Jean's writing desk, an old book had been pulled from its shelf. Its pages had been torn, one piece sticking out, stained with blood. Lucienne grabbed it, flipping to the page where Jean had left her final mark. A sketch. A sigil. And beneath it, words written in Jean's shaky script. Saint Armand. Lucienne exhaled. The crypt. It's beneath Saint Armand. Eva's eyes widened. The old cathedral? Not just the cathedral. He turned the book so she could see. The catacombs beneath it. That's where we have to go. Eva looked up, eyes burning. Before anyone else does. Crypt's entrance loomed ahead, swallowed in the ancient shadows of the church. The air was thick, heavy, alive, as if the very walls carried the weight of centuries. Eva and Lucien stood at the threshold, the damp scent of old stone and earth curling in their lungs. Eva tightened her grip on the map, its edges crumpled beneath her fingers. This was it. The path Moreau had sought. The path that had gotten him killed. "We need to be quick," Lucien murmured, his voice cutting through the silence like a blade. His eyes swept the darkness, each flickering shadow a potential threat. Eva nodded. The anticipation, the unknown, made the air feel suffocating. Then, movement. Shadows peeled away from the darkness. As figures emerged. Two of them, their presence unnaturally still. They wore robes of deep black, woven with silver sigils that shimmered under the moon's faint glow. The Watchers. Their faces were obscured by low hoods, their presence draining the very light from the space around them. "Stop right there," one of them intoned, his voice a graveled whisper, like stone grinding against stone. Eva's breath hitched. Instinctively, she took a step back, her fingers brushing against Lucien's arm. "Who are you?" Lucien's voice was firm, controlled, but his stance shifted, his body coiled, ready. The first Watcher moved forward, slow, deliberate, as if time itself bowed to his will. "We are the Watchers of Sion. Guardians of these secrets. You must cease your investigation immediately." Eva's fingers curled tighter around the map. "We can't do that." Silence. Then. A glint of metal. A weapon drawn. The second Watcher raised an old revolver, its barrel gleaming ominously. "Then you leave us no choice." Lucien's reaction was instant. His gun was up, his stance shifting. "Stay back." The air snapped tight, a fragile moment before violence. Then. Gunfire. The first shot tore through the silence, deafening. Lucien dove, rolling, returning fire. The Watchers moved with eerie precision, their dark robes billowing like specters. Lucien raised his weapon into the air as well, with equal precision. One of them staggered, a hit. He crumpled with a strangled gasp, clutching his side, blood spreading across his robe like ink on parchment. The second Watcher melted into the shadows, retreating, his footsteps swift but silent. Gone. Lucien stood, gun still raised, breath controlled. "Show yourself." Nothing. Only the crypt's waiting silence. Eva exhaled sharply, forcing herself to move past the shock. The crypt entrance yawned before them, a door to something far older than death. Lucien lowered his weapon, scanning the darkness. "Are you hurt?" Eva shook her head. "No. But we need to move." Without another word, they pushed the door open, the heavy wood groaning in protest. Darkness swallowed them whole. The descent. Lucien and Eva moved quickly, their footsteps barely more than whispers on the cold stone. The crypt was suffocatingly still, the air damp with centuries of secrets. Torches flickered, their flames bending as though disturbed by an unseen breath. Eva traced the map with her fingertips, her pulse hammering. "There's more here," she murmured. The passageway narrowed, the walls pressing in. Then, a door. Iron. Old. Marked with jagged symbols that pulsed as if alive. Eva hesitated, pressing a hand against the metal. A shudder ran through her fingers. Something was on the other side. Lucien pushed the door open slowly. The chamber beyond was lined with sarcophagi, their surfaces carved with symbols lost to time. Dust curled in the disturbed air, spiraling upward like forgotten souls. Then. A flicker of movement, one that caused them both to tense. Lucien's gun was up in an instant. "Who's there?" From behind one of the sarcophagi, a figure stepped forward. He was clad in deep crimson robes, embroidered with symbols burned into the very fabric. The Resurrectors. Unlike the Watchers, these men did not hide in shadows. They were bathed in a ritual fire which exuded power. The man's eyes gleamed with unholy fervor, his presence heavier than the air around him. "The Codex Tenebris," he intoned, his voice low, hungry. "You have something that belongs to us." Lucien stepped forward, placing himself between Eva and the stranger. And who the hell are you? A slow, chilling smile. We are the Resurrectors. The ones who will awaken the Grail. Eva's blood ran cold. You're hunting the Codex. The Resurrector inclined his head. And you will hand it over. Lucian's finger tightened on the trigger. Not a chance. He didn't mention they didn't have the Codex anyway. The air shifted. A ripple of power. Then, the Resurrector lifted his hand, whispering something ancient. The space around them shivered, like the world itself had inhaled. The air plummeted in temperature, frost creeping along the stone floor. Lucian fired. The bullet vanished before impact, swallowed by an unseen force. Foolish, the Resurrector murmured. The Grail protects us. Then, more figures soon emerged. More crimson robes and incoherent whispers. Their presence swelled, suffocating, pressing down like unseen hands. Eva clutched Saunier's cross, its warmth a defiant pulse against the growing void. Lucian's jaw clenched. They were outnumbered. Outmatched. The Resurrector's gaze darkened. Surrender the Codex. Eva's mind raced. Then, her eyes caught something. The glyph. She turned to Lucian, whispering urgently. There. A way out. His gaze followed hers. A mark on the sarcophagus. It matched one of the symbols on Jean's map. Lucian didn't hesitate. Move, now. Eva's fingers brushed the glyph. The sarcophagus shuddered, shifting open. A passage revealed itself, a dark corridor plunging deeper underground. Lucian grabbed Eva's hand and yanked her through. Stone trembled. The Resurrectors shouted, their voices rising in fury. However, the moment they crossed the threshold, the passage sealed behind them. The flight. They ran without turning back. The tunnel wound downward, colder, deeper. The only sounds, their heavy breaths and their footsteps. The weight of what had just happened still replayed in their thoughts. Finally, they slowed, catching their breath in a dimly lit chamber. Ancient carvings lined the walls, their meanings lost to time. That was close, Eva murmured between breaths. Lucian wiped the back of his hand across his forehead. Too close. We need to get out of this village. Now. Eva forced herself upright, ignoring the ache in her muscles. And go where? We can't just disappear without a plan. Lucian exhaled. We can't trust anyone now. Eva nodded, gripping the cross. Then we find out what Saunier died protecting, before they do. Above them, Rennes-le-Château waited. Watching. And somewhere, in the highest window of Magdala Tower, a candle flickered once, then vanished. They thought they had it all worked out, but they were very wrong. Eva hunched over the motel room table, her fingers skimming the brittle pages of Julien Moreau's journal. The dim lamplight stretched shadows across the cluttered desk, distorting the inked words like whispered secrets. The air smelled of old paper and mold. Moreau's journal was chaos. Latin phrases scrawled in frantic ink, rough sketches crowding the margins, maps annotated with cryptic notes. It was a puzzle without edges, a labyrinth of half-formed thoughts. It read like a slow descent into insanity. She chewed her bottom lip, turning another page. Fragments of parchment peeled away under her fingertips, thin, delicate, overhandled. Something about these particular pages had been revisited again and again. Lucian leaned against the wall, arms crossed, watching her with an unreadable expression. His skepticism was palpable, but there was something else there, too. A reluctant respect. Anything? His voice broke the silence, low and gravelly. Eva didn't look up. Give me a minute. She shuffled through the pages, her pulse quickening as her eyes locked onto a familiar shape. A map, half erased, its ink smudged, edges torn as if someone had tried to erase its existence. This isn't just a map, she murmured, her fingers trailing over the faded lines. It's incomplete. But the symbols, they're Templar. Lucian pushed off the wall, stepping closer. Templar? His voice lost its usual dryness, replaced by something sharper. Eva tapped at the intricate markings. These reference a lost archive beneath an abbey. She tilted the book, angling it under the light. Certain areas looked deliberately erased, entire sections torn away. Lucien's gaze darkened. Missing? Or removed? Eva hesitated. Torn out. Her voice barely rose above a whisper. Something tightened in Lucien's posture. His fingers flexed at his sides, a subtle tell. Then she saw it. A single phrase scrawled in hurried Latin beneath the map's markings. The ink had bled into the fibers of the page, as if it had been written with a shaking hand. Eva exhaled slowly and read aloud. Ubi mortui non dormint, scientia mene. Where the dead do not sleep, knowledge waits. The motel room felt colder. Lucien stiffened. His jaw ticked, muscles flexing beneath the dim glow of the lamp. Eva narrowed her eyes. You know that phrase? Lucien's voice was quieter now, tinged with something unreadable. Yeah. I've heard it before. She turned fully to face him. Where? Lucien exhaled through his nose, dragging a hand through his hair. There's an abbey. In the Pyrenees. Abandoned. His voice was lower now, almost reluctant. Eva frowned. And? Lucien's gaze flickered toward the window, the reflection of the lamplight catching in his irises. The monks never buried their dead. A beat of silence. The air between them thickened. Eva's stomach twisted. Why? Lucien's voice was barely above a breath. They believed the dead held knowledge that couldn't be lost. He let the weight of the words settle before adding, they kept them above ground. Guarding something. The motel room seemed to shrink around them, the silence pressing in. Outside, the wind rattled against the window pane, but neither of them moved. Eva's fingers tightened around the page, its brittle surface crackling under her grip. Then that's where we're going. Lucien rubbed a hand over his face, his sigh laced with resignation. There was no point in arguing. Yeah, he said grimly. Guess we are. Lucien braced himself as he mentally prepared himself for what lay ahead for them both. The rental car groaned in protest as it climbed the winding mountain road, tires slipping against the wet gravel. A dense mist coiled between the peaks, swallowing the last traces of daylight. The Pyrenees stretched into the storm-heavy sky like the ribs of a slumbering giant, ancient and unyielding. Eva gripped Moreau's map, the parchment damp between her fingers. There, she murmured, voice tight. That ridge matches the drawing. Lucien slowed the car, eyes narrowing at the abandoned ruin that emerged from the mist. The remains of the abbey rose like a skeletal hand from the earth, its crumbling walls half swallowed by time. He turned onto a narrow dirt track, the car shuddering as the tires fought against the deep ruts. It doesn't want us here, Eva thought, gripping the dashboard as a shudder ran through her. The abbey was built on Templar foundations, she muttered, stuffing the map into her jacket. Most of it burned down in the 1600s, but Moreau's notes say one chapel survived. Lucien didn't respond. His hands were tense on the wheel. A shadow flickered through the mist. For an instant, Eva swore she saw a figure standing among the ruins, a vague, watching presence, neither moving nor speaking. But as the mist shifted, it was gone. A trick of the storm. Or something worse. Thunder cracked overhead, rolling through the mountains like a distant war drum. They abandoned the car and hiked quickly, boots sinking into mud-slicked earth, the wind howling through the gaping ruins. Broken columns jutted from the ground, wrapped in vines, like ribs of some forgotten beast, struggling to breathe. Then Eva stopped short. A jolt of cold terror shot through her. She grabbed Lucien's arm, nails digging into his sleeve. A whispered warning, look. Up there. Lucien followed her gaze. Dark figures lined the ridge above. Motionless. Watching. Their robes snapped violently in the wind, yet they did not sway. Their hoods obscured their faces, but even from this distance, something felt wrong. As if they weren't simply standing there. As if they were waiting. Lucien's voice was barely more than a breath. Resurrectors. The word slithered through Eva like ice. He shoved her behind a crumbling pillar. They must have followed us from the village. Eva's breath came shallow. Her eyes darted to the chapel, barely visible ahead, a blackened husk clinging to the mountainside like something long dead. Its walls, once pristine, were scorched and warped. The door hung open, twisted from fire or time. "We need to reach that chapel before they do," she whispered. Lightning tore through the sky. And for a split second, just a flicker of a moment, the flash revealed something beneath the resurrectors' hoods. Not faces. Not human. Something wrong. Like a mutilated canvas, something hard to decipher. Eva's stomach lurched. Lucien cursed under his breath. "They're boxing us in." The figures did not rush forward. They descended in eerie silence, moving in perfect unison, no sound, no hesitation. Lucien's gaze flicked to the crumbling path ahead. No cover. No way back. "We run," he said. The first drops of rain hit the stone, cold and heavy. Then, the storm broke. Rain slammed down in sheets, drenching them instantly. A deafening roar filled the air, drowning the world in chaos. They ran as though on impulse. Through the ruins, over broken stones, their boots kicking up mud and shattered relics. The chapel loomed ahead, just 100 yards. Behind them, the resurrectors moved without sound. Not running, not faltering. Just coming. Eva stumbled, her foot catching on a jagged step. A curse tore from her lips as she fought to regain balance. Lucien grabbed her wrist, yanking her forward. The chapel's doorway gaped before them, a black maw carved into the stone, a place where light had long since fled. As they crossed the threshold, another sound rose beneath it. A whisper. A voice. Low and menacing. "You were not the first to seek this place." Eva froze. The chapel door groaned wider, on its own. A breath of cold, stale air drifted out, thick with the scent of old earth, wax, and copper. Lucien's pulse thundered in his ears. Then, the wind stopped. Just like that. The storm still raged beyond the chapel's walls, but inside, the air was utterly still. No wind. No sound. Just silence. A silence waiting to be filled. Eva took a step forward, her breath uneven. Lucien exhaled slowly, shifting his stance. His fingers brushed the grip of his gun, but something in him knew, this was not a place that feared bullets. Behind them, outside the chapel, the resurrectors did not follow. They simply stood at the threshold. Unmoving. As if bound by something unseen. Their heads tilted in eerie unison. Eva swallowed hard. "Lucien," she whispered, barely daring to move. He nodded, his jaw tight. "I know." Then, from the darkness ahead, another voice. A deeper whisper, almost amused. "Come inside, seekers. The dead have been waiting." And this time, the door behind them slammed shut. The sound mimicking that of a scythe cutting through the abyss. The storm crashed against the chapel like a battering ram, the rain slamming into the cracked stone roof in a relentless fury. Water dripped through ancient fractures, tracing thin rivulets down the moss-covered walls. As Eva and Lucien burst through the doors, a deafening clap of thunder drowned out their hurried breaths, sealing them inside with an air of finality. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The dim interior breathed with something old, not just dust and damp decay, but something more intangible, watching. Candles long since extinguished had left melted wax pooled on the altar, their wicks blackened as if snuffed out in haste. The flickering stormlight, filtering through shattered stained glass, made the shadows writhe, not just from the wind, but as if something unseen moved among them. Eva ran a hand over her arms, suppressing a shiver. They were not alone. Her boots scraped against loose debris as she stepped forward, fingers grazing the damp stone. Near the altar, her breath hitched. Something lay hidden beneath centuries of dust, something carved into the rock itself. Lucien followed her gaze, his own tension sharpened by instinct. Eva knelt, brushing aside the dirt with steady hands. A mural emerged, its colors faded but its meaning unmistakable. It depicted knights in ceremonial armor, their faces once proud, now scratched away, gouged out with a fury that seemed almost desperate. The figures descended into darkness, carrying an ornate chest down a spiraling path. Someone didn't want this story remembered. Eva's fingers traced the worn inscription beneath the figures. The stone was cracked, but the words were still legible. The gate is not in stone but in sacrifice. Her stomach twisted. A warning. Or a demand. Lucien's fingers hovered over the wall near the altar, following patterns carved in rhythmic precision. We've seen these before. His voice was barely above a murmur. Moreau's journal. The symbols, he was trying to decode them. Eva's pulse quickened. That means we're in the right place. A gust of wind howled through the ruined stained glass above, sending the candle stubs rattling against the altar. It wasn't the storm. The air had grown colder, thicker, as if the chapel itself had heard them. It disapproved. She moved swiftly, pressing her palm against different stones along the altar, searching for a hollow space. The markings seemed almost to shift beneath her touch, their meaning dancing at the edge of recognition. Then, Lucien's fingers brushed against something. A symbol. A Templar seal, carved deeply into the far wall. His fingertips tingled the moment they made contact, a whisper of static threading up his arm. The stone shuddered beneath his touch. Then, the floor trembled. A groan rumbled through the foundations, a sound so deep it wasn't heard but felt, vibrating through their bones. Lucien jerked his hand away just as the stone beneath them gave way. The chapel lurched. A crack split through the floor, snaking outward in jagged lines. Then, with a sickening lurch, the slab beneath them collapsed. Chunks of stone plummeted into the abyss below, swallowed instantly by darkness. The sound of tumbling rocks was like a death knell ringing through the chapel. Lucien staggered backward, catching himself against the wall. "It's a trap," he panted. "They didn't want anyone getting further." Eva peered over the gaping void. No bottom. Just blackness, stretching downward into what might as well be another world. "This isn't the real entrance," she murmured, the weight of the realization settling in her chest. The Templars had wanted intruders to fall. And they almost had. Lucien steadied himself, heart still hammering. "Then where the hell is it?" Eva turned to the altar, to the symbols glowing faintly in the storm-lit dark. She could feel something pressing against her mind, a whispering tension at the edges of her thoughts. The chapel was alive. It was watching. And it was waiting. Lucien exhaled through gritted teeth. "Whatever's hidden here. It demands a price." Eva nodded, never taking her eyes off the shadows beyond the ruined altar. "Let's find out what that price is." Together, they turned toward the unknown. And the chapel doors, though battered by the storm outside, sealed shut behind them. Eva exhaled, steadying herself. She flipped through Moreau's tattered journal, her fingers trembling over the smudged ink and hurried Latin notations. Through the flickering beam of her flashlight, she found it, a rough sketch, nearly lost to time. "A graveyard," she whispered, tracing her fingers over the faded map. "Moreau's notes say there's a forgotten burial site near the abbey." Lucien leaned over, eyes narrowing at the hand-drawn crosses, partially obscured by hastily scratched warnings. "That doesn't look like a normal cemetery." A gust of wind howled through the broken stained glass, sending shadows writhing across the chapel walls. "We don't have a choice," Eva said, tucking the journal back into her coat. "If the entrance exists, that's where we'll find it."